We do have a lot of time built in today for discussion. So I'm just gonna see if I can move my slides. I want to just encourage everyone to feel free to use the chat throughout all of this. Jessica's monitoring it and can call things out if we need it. So there's also going to be some Q&A time and time to work on your own assignments and syllabi. So stay tuned. So this is our agenda for today. I'm Jennifer Trainer. I'm in the English department. I've been working with first-year writers for a long time. So I'm going to give like a little overview just based on me listening to my students over the past few semesters in first-year writing here. Then we're going to have some time to dive into some practical tips for assignment redesign and syllabus policy updating to kind of meet this moment. I also want to note that we have another workshop on April 17th. CEETL is sponsoring a workshop on critical AI. So watch for that because I think it's going to be really good. Okay, so let me just go back here. Some framing concepts just from my perspective. So I think everyone knows last year, November of 22, OpenAI released ChatGPT, hailed as artificial intelligence. To the astonishment of everyone, I think, at least for me, it seemed that we had a synthetic writing machine that would just do it for us. And also, I want to just say, an art making machine, a design machine, a coding machine, because those came on right at the same time. Tools like ChatGPT can produce almost any genre of writing that you can ask it to, that you can think of. It can write emails, poetry, reflective essays, personal experience and memoir, reflections on your writing and learning process. Newer versions and some paid versions will provide links to sources, write lit reviews, summarize academic articles into digestible bullet points. Some will edit, actually they'll all edit, translate, and then of course we have these other AI tools generating art, video, music, augmenting design, all of this November 2022. So since it was released, the AI tools have been marketed really fairly aggressively, and especially to educators and students. I want to call out this one, myessayfeedback.com. This is an AI tool marketed to teachers. You can put your own rubric in here and have your students upload their essays, and it will provide synthetic feedback for them. If you're horrified, I'm with you. Oh, did I just get out of the share? Hold on. Or the present. It's very hard to get Zoom out of the way to do this. Bear with me. There we go. Much of the marketing is directly to students. Some like Quillbot and Grammarly have been around for a while, but they're now using AI in their applications as well. This one is on our own campus. It's right outside my building, in the humanities building. So all of this students are seeing all the time. There is some recent studies that show that students are very eager to get started. I think we saw this probably yesterday in the student panel, which I couldn't go to, but wanted to. Students are eager to learn about the technology. They believe they're going to need it in their jobs. You can see some of these quotes from Axios. 57% of Gen Z and 62% of millennials are more excited than worried. They're already familiar with it. And I want to call attention to the final one on the bottom right. This student was one of ours last semester, and he said, you know, at SF State, a lot of times you're not allowed to use it to make your writing better, but at Princeton, students are using it to get ahead in their fields, and we are being left behind. So I have questions as a writing teacher. I am sure many of you do, and sometimes I want to do this. I would like to just avoid this entire thing. I come to this as someone who's been teaching writing for 30 years. So what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is just some of the ways I've been thinking about what AI might mean for us as educators, and especially in the writing context. But I invite you to kind of connect it to your own context and make those bridges. And I'm anxious to hear what you have to say also. So students are nervous, but they're also eager and excited. They want to use the technology. They want to get started. They feel like they need it for their jobs. Faculty also have a lot of questions and concerns, but the number one concern on our campus, CEETL did a little survey, but also across the country, is academic integrity. So that's where we'll start. So my first theme is when it comes to academic integrity, we have to start teaching rather than policing. I have had lots of conversations over the past 3 or 4 semesters now where teachers on our campus are clamoring for policy to address, like campus-wide policy to address academic integrity now that we have these technologies. So this actually pushed me to go look up what we have on our policy. It's Senate Policy S22298. Like most of you, I only knew about this policy before AI because it came to me like in instructional reminders from the dean's office or from the department chair every semester. This is what you're supposed to put on your syllabus, the plagiarism policy that's required to go on there. I hadn't looked up the whole policy. So once AI came out, I went and looked. So what you see on the slide now is the part of the policy that I had not seen before, that is not in our instructional reminders, at least not in LCA. And I noticed, I'd like to call out some of the words in this policy. The stronger language. Faculty should make academic integrity a key component of instruction. So I think, and I also noticed the linking of academic integrity, not to punishment or like consequences or what's going to happen if you cheat, but to values that I think we all hold dear, intellectual growth, equity, creativity, knowledge building, and learning. So for better or worse, the policing approach in the first part of the policy might have worked in the past, probably didn't, but theoretically worked in the past. It's not going to work anymore. Our first problem with that first part of the policy is that Turnitin, which was our go-to software for many folks in terms of plagiarism, and other software detection tools for detecting AI writing won't work for detecting it. They don't work. So Turnitin has an error rate of 4%. So last year on our campus, that would have been 3,459 false accusations of plagiarism, which is a lot. That's a high number. A second problem with Turnitin in our current moment is that a focus on policing or prohibiting kind of reduces the complexities of academic integrity, especially now, to a rule, cite your sources. And the rule doesn't help students when it comes to AI use. A third problem, especially for those of us who assign or teach writing, is that we have to kind of distinguish between plagiarism and cheating. They definitely overlap, but plagiarism is using other people's words without citation, and cheating is a broader problem. It can include using any kind of prohibited shortcut or an aid to game the system and get a better grade or get ahead of other students somehow. So machine-generated writing is not exactly plagiarism because ChatGPT or any of these AI tools lack the status of authorship. They aren't responsible for the output that they create. Most academic journals are not going to accept ChatGPT as an author. In fact, I don't think any of them would accept ChatGPT as an author. So it can't actually be cited in the way that plagiarism, works in terms of our citation framework. It can be, of course, prohibited as an act of cheating, which we'll get to. But Turnitin detects plagiarism, not cheating. So it's reliable for plagiarism, but with cheating, it creates all these false positives. Fourth problem here with the false positives is that Turnitin tends to catch multilingual writers more often than English speaking only, or English speakers more who are using ChatGPT. So it catches multilingual and underserved students more often, which is a big problem. Human readers do not fare much better. I think as teachers, we can sometimes spot machine-generated writing. I certainly have. I'm pretty sure that I've seen it in students' writing. I can tell when they're using it. But our lens also reproduces those biases because we tend to catch the students who are least served the most often. If AI is used clumsily by a student who doesn't have the literacy skills to do more with it, we see it. So that student is then doubly sort of marginalized, right? They're both seen as plagiarizing by me or cheating by me, and they are also underserved students. So this is something we really have to think about. I like this quote from Jessica, who's here, Jessica Adams-Grigoriev. She says, when we see AI writing from students, when we think we're detecting it, we're actually seeing an instance of a literacy equity gap. So we're seeing the students who need our help the most, who are struggling the most. So if we need to teach, not police, if we need to move away from the policing discourse, and we can't use Turnitin, what do we do instead? Okay, so my second theme is we have to address the gap between learning work, which we value and students want, and busy work, which no one intends, but often is the perception for students. These are some quotes that students have shared with me over the past few semesters in my first year writing assignments. They say, we're already robots in school. Some assignments should be automated. It's okay for some assignments. They, the teachers, aren't looking for what you say, just how you say it. The synthetic writing that chat does, it's what our teachers try to get us to do. It's like for 5-paragraph essays and paragraph structures that don't have any personality, which we were taught in high school. Keep in mind, my students are right out of high school for the most part, so this, it reflects that. We know that students struggle to find their purpose when they're overwhelmed with like formal genre requirements or a bunch of constraints in an assignment. So I think as teachers, we really have to scrutinize the formatting requirements and the ways we're framing our assignments. We may need to rethink assignments that aren't clearly tied to learning goals, where the learning isn't really highlighted, and because students perceive them as busy work and they believe busy work can be automated. My third theme is to recognize that the literacy economy is changing. And I think, especially in writing, but we're going to have to change. Any of us who assign writing are going to need to change along with it. So we need to think that anyone with a push of a button now can easily produce the Queen's English, in quotes there. This lowers the value of it and the gatekeeping power of standard English, which used to be pretty high. That's why students, worry about their writing. That's why teachers are constantly telling them to cross their T's and dot their I's, because they're going to be judged when they go into the workplace or into another class. But that's changing. Students are now going to need to know how to stand out as human. Human sound may be more important than ever. So one of my students here pretty much sums that up. He said, we've got to sound for real in our writing, or people will think I'm just spam, which I thought was a very insightful point. If you're using ChatGPT, it's writing that makes you sound like everyone, so you're joining the crowd. So we have to think about that in terms of our assignments. Theme 4, center disability justice, accessibility, and linguistic justice. It's important to remember, I think, how important tools and technologies, supports of all kind, can be for all of us who are doing creative and intellectual work. My students have a lot to say about the role that technology in general plays for many of them who struggle with certain kinds of disabilities, but also how important it's been in their non-school intellectual and creative pursuits. They say things like, for students like me with learning disabilities, like with dyslexia, this could really be a lifesaver. Writing takes me so much longer than it does everyone else because of my disability. This could help. And it's important to keep in mind that writing always requires technology of some sort. We use Google Docs, we have spell check now, and on and on. But another student said, using Grammarly has helped me with my meaning in assignments. Before, I spent all my time trying to do the essay correctly. Now I can focus more on my ideas. Number 5 here is to build students' AI learning into our learning outcomes and to start getting kind of intentional about that. On the slide is an example of how we're beginning to do this work in lower division writing courses. This is some of the ways we're trying to, in the bold, you can see some of the ways we're trying to layer AI learning in to our courses. So we encourage you to examine your learning outcomes and see where you can start to think about incorporating academic integrity and AI learning into what you're already doing. All right, I'm almost there. Theme 6 is to embrace critical AI, which is a movement that examines all of the environmental, labor, bias issues that come up with this technology, actually come up with all technology. A critical approach to this technology is so aligned with the social justice mission of our campus that it's, intuitive, I think. We need to teach students about how technology really works. We can partner with our librarians who are amazing at doing this. They have amazing approaches that help students understand how knowledge is produced, whose perspective it's produced from, in whose interest it is, and we can teach AI, I think, through that lens. Okay, I want to pause here for questions and see if there's anyone who wants to have a little Q&A or wants to offer a perspective from your own context. We have a little bit of time, and then we'll start to do some Padlet and breakout room work. checking out the chat here. Everybody good? No questions? All right. All right. Well, I can keep going. You want me to keep going? Everybody's all right.
We did have a hand go up.
Oh,
from
okay.
David. David, I don't know if you want to chime in.
Yeah, okay. I thought I would bring up one point. I was talking to a teacher this past week about AI and kind of bringing an awareness of how to work with AI into the classroom. And their response was, I don't want to give students the idea to use AI because right now they're not accessing it. And I just want them to work on their own academic literacy. That surprised me and interested me, that idea that we might be prematurely getting them to jump in.
I've heard that a couple of times, that we don't want to teach them that it's there. But I think they know it's there. All of my students in my classes this semester are very aware of it. Several of them said they used it through high school. They just got here. I mean, that's surprised me. They wrote their senior, papers or whatever they have to write in high school using ChatGPT. So I would encourage people to question that. I don't think we are keeping students from the knowledge of it by not mentioning it. It's all over campus. I mean, there's flyers on campus advertising AI homework help and AI tutoring help. It's all over the news. Yeah. I mean, I do think students are wary of it. I don't think they're all using it all the time. I'm fairly certain that most of mine are not using it all of the time, and they're nervous about it. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to, they don't want to do anything wrong, which is understandable. I think most students approach technology in very good faith. We approach school in very good faith. And this is so new that they don't know yet how to use it without misusing it. So yeah, but I have not since the first semester encountered a student who wasn't aware of it.
And if I could just respond, yeah. I appreciate that. And I do think our students may wonder why the heck we're not talking about it. Why aren't we providing guidance?
Yep.
Because as a society, we're kind of stumbling into this competition to be human with computers. And if we're not talking about it, it seems like we're not being responsible educators. Correct.
Yeah, we're going to let them stumble around on their own to figure it out, which I don't think is the best idea either. I think we really need to, talk about tool use in terms of, what tools do writers use? What tools do artists use? How do these tools help? What are their limitations? Those are the conversations I think we have to start having. Hi, David, by the way. Those are great questions. Anybody else? All right. I will keep us going. So on my slide is a link, which I think Jessica has for the chat, to CEETL's guidance page for assignment design and syllabus policy to meet this moment, to do what David is basically saying we do need to do, because we don't want to leave our students stumbling around to figure this out on their own. Let's see. I'm going to open it, and I'm still sharing screen and take you through it. All of these, let's get to the top here. You scroll down a little bit if you're following along on your own, scroll down to section 1. All of these strategies are aimed at creating student buy-in. They're good teaching strategies, best practices for teachers in general, in any discipline, especially writing, but I think anyone who assigns writing or assigns any kind of projects, they're good regardless of AI, but I think they're especially important now. Buy-in deters AI use, or it deters illegitimate AI use. It helps students understand the purpose and benefit of assignments. It means giving students opportunities to explore, apply, create, as well as demonstrate learning. So it takes the emphasis off assessment and puts it on the students learning, what they're getting out of it. It may mean actually de-emphasizing assessment and grades to some extent, and it definitely means increasing the transparency in your classes so that students understand your rationale for assignments and assessments. The more we can undercut that busy work perception, the better. So strategies that promote student buy-in and teach academic integrity overlap with each other, but they also overlap with our equity focus on our campus. Creating buy-in promotes equity because it's transparent and because it's student-centered. It helps students see like how assignments support their growth and learning, which is an equity practice. So we have a whole bunch of strategies for creating buy-in. All of them will work in all kinds of ways. So I think our first step here is to get an assignment that you're a little bit worried about in terms of students' AI use. You're thinking maybe they could use it they could use AI to complete this assignment. Maybe they are using AI. Maybe they should be, maybe they shouldn't be. I'm not sure. So get that assignment, one of your assignments in mind. And I'm going to take you through these strategies. And as we go with your assignment in mind, you can just note 1, 2, or 3 of them that you think might help you redesign the assignment to help students use AI responsibly. So I'll give you a second to get your assignment in mind. All right, so I'm going to take you through all the tips and strategies. So first tip, emphasize learning. Oh, and by the way, I use practically every single one of these in my classes. I really do. So if anyone wants to hear a little bit more about how I do it or what my ideas are for doing it, I'm happy to go more in depth, but I'll just give you the overview here, and you can think about which ones might be useful for your context. So emphasize learning by assigning in-class reflections on key takeaways or learning summaries. Emphasis on in-class there. Ask students to write about their experiences and relationships to course material and to readings. Engage students in discussions of their reading, their research, and their writing process. Build that into your class and into your assignments. Emphasize purpose by discussing learning goals and rationale with students in class. Build these discussions into your assignment, maybe creating like a coda to an assignment or a final section of an assignment that asks students to talk about how they met the assignment goals or to preflect, imagining the future where they might use the learning in future classes or in their profession. Imagine them transferring that learning forward. Invite students to participate in assignment construction, so that they have some investment in what they're being asked to do. So I will sometimes do this by bringing in a partial assignment sheet. I've maybe got the goal, but I've left the constraints blank, or I've left the length out, or I've left the content out. I leave some of it out, and we co-construct it together. So I'm able to ask students, like, what is our purpose in this assignment? How will we know when we've achieved our purpose? What constraints should we use? Which ones do we not need for this assignment, and why? So you're building a lot of buy-in when you do that kind of thing. You're also helping students see why we're doing what we're doing. Share research on how people learn in general and show them how that research is built into your curriculum. So I literally did this this last week with my English 114 students. I brought in some evidence, like some evidence from the science of reading on like the top 7 ways to increase your reading comprehension and improve as a reader based on science, and had them work backwards to identify which ones we had been practicing all semester. So no, I'm not just making you do these annotations because I like torturing you. Like, it's actually how people learn. You can co-construct grading criteria with students to help create more buy-in in your assignments. You can debrief graded assignments in class, show students exemplars, ask them to think about the tone or the sound of an essay, especially if you're worried that they're using AI. Ask them to think about which assignments sound engaging, sound lively, and which ones sound like boilerplate or sound like robot writing. Emphasize the process. This is, of course, really important if you're assigning writing, but I can imagine it would be important in all kinds of assignments. You can ask students to annotate or reflect on their assignments. I use Google Docs a lot with my students, and I have them comment on their own writing. I ask them, like, what's your favorite part? Where did you struggle? What's the most important takeaway that you want the reader to get? If you had another 3 days to work on this, what would you change and why? And I make them do that in the comments. It's pretty hard. They could use AI for that, but it would take a lot of steps to do that. Similarly, you can ask students to write a statement of goals and choices in response to an assignment. So that's where they write like a little methods section that goes at the beginning of their essay or at the beginning of their project, and they explain the methods that they used. What tools did they use? What resources did they consult? What process did they undergo to create their final project? You can assess the thoroughness of students' process rather than or in addition to their final product. So you can ask for process artifacts to be turned in with assignments. You can ask students to create those process artifacts in class, so you know that they're actually generating them. I have also asked my students sometimes to write a little paragraph explaining how they got from the free write in class to the final. Like, what did you go through to turn that free write into your opening paragraph or to turn that free write into your thesis statement? Same with outlines. Okay. Want to de-emphasize busy work and grades. I think we've been over some of that. Give students choices in how they can demonstrate learning or how they can practice a skill. Use equity-based grading practices, contract grades, or portfolio assessments. Use a combination of soft and hard deadlines with assignments to take the time pressure off. A lot of the reasons students turn to shortcuts is time pressure. So really working with them on deadlines and helping them understand both the purpose of a deadline, but also where there's some give, where they can manage their own time is really helpful. All right. Okay, this one's important. Hold students accountable. Remind them that they are responsible for the ideas and words under their byline, including inaccuracies, hallucinations, misstatements, made-up quotes, biases, misinformation, whatever it is. To just remind them that wherever they got it, once it's under their name, it's now attached to them. They own it. You can include phrases on assessment rubrics that encourage original thinking and accountability. So even if students can, use AI to cheat their way through that you're still signaling to them that what you care about is their personal engagement and original thinking if you put it right in your rubric. And you can tell them that their writing or their projects must not contain made-up facts, logical inconsistencies, and remind them again that they're responsible. Okay, I want to give you a little time. Do we want to do breakout rooms for this, or should we just go straight to the Padlet?
I think we should just think a little bit and go straight to the Padlet.
Okay.
There was a question on how would this work in online classes, and maybe that's it's worth spending a few minutes on that discussion.
I can't see who asked it, but did the person who asked it, do you have a specific kind of assignment in an online class in mind that you're thinking about?
Andrew, it's Andrew King. Would you like to say something around this? Andrew, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the questions about online assignments, I think a lot of the same things apply, but nope, did we get them? Nope. And then all the same difficulties that we have in translating an in-person class into an online context, especially if it's asynchronous, also apply. So that adaptation that you always have to do when you create an online course out of a, from an in-person one. The buy-in, I think, if it's an online asynchronous course, the buy-in comes in how you're engaging with them in your video lectures and video materials, the way you're framing things in your assignments, what you're emphasizing in your assessments, and then how you're responding to them and the opportunities you're giving them to do process-based work. It's all the same. It just takes that extra effort to put it into video and writing because you're asynchronous. You're not having to meet with them. Right. I think is the goal, if we're really clear about it, if it is just, if their ideas are what's center and they're using AI, in some ways, students have told me I use it to help me get ideas. I use it to help me brainstorm. does it matter? Right? I mean, it's another, would we be upset if they Googled it or if they read Wikipedia to get ideas? Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about that. I mean, a determined student could certainly still outsource their writing, but that's always been true. A determined student can cheat their way through regardless of this technology. Maybe it is a little easier depending on the assignment now than it was before, but I'll never forget a few years ago. This was actually more than a few because I was not even teaching here at the time, but a student told me that paying someone to write their essay for them was not plagiarism because they paid for it, they own it. You get students like that. That's going to be the case no matter what. But most students are not at all like that. Most students really want to engage and they're looking for opportunities to. They're looking for the teachers welcoming their engagement. A lot of my students have said if they feel a lot of pressure, that forces them into shortcuts. If they're worried, that their teacher is going to give them a bad grade. So if we can kind of remove some of that pressure, but keep the engagement up.
I think, I've also heard, and I had a lot of reflection in my assignments, and I've heard a lot of colleagues say, oh, and it came up here as well, that people are using ChatGPT to even come up with their own reflections and make it their own, make it personal. But I think, Jennifer, you and I have had this discussion that then appealing to people and their basic honesty that, I'm an Indian immigrant woman. Do I want to write about anything that ChatGPT brings up, maybe even a Latina colored person and their reflection and just put it in. So, how do you, or someone else, just put in words, prompts around Indian immigrant woman of color and just put in whatever comes. Is that really my story? It's not. So, and that's not never, and these things will never fly in the workforce, right?
Right.
You're not going to be able to use ChatGPT and get away with that stuff in the workforce. So this is our moment to teach students to be more authentic.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that that's the making students realize that they're accountable for what's under their byline. Like you have to get them past that idea that they're just submitting something for busy work and realize that they own it. So if exactly what you're saying, if they're using ChatGPT to outsource the writing of their own story, that only works if you then take what chat gave you and read it critically and really make it your story, right? Like maybe it gives you a few ideas, or maybe because students are often, I don't even know what to say. I don't know where to start. Maybe it gives you a direction, but it isn't your story until you've said, I'm going to turn this into that story. I'm going to turn this example into my example about such and such. And now, it's yours. But if the more specifically you try to prompt it, as Anoshwa, you just said, in terms of telling your own story, the more you're going to get it to reproduce stereotypes. So if you ask it to write from the perspective of your own identity, you're going to get a stereotyped, version of that identity. And so I have a lot of activities I've been using with my students in that sort of information literacy way to show them the biases that come in, the cultural appropriation that comes in from using it, the ways in which it'll hallucinate these really stereotyped identities. Yeah. Even using it for editing, I'm trying to show students, yes, it can make your grammar sound more perfect or more professional, but you lose, I have an example where the ChatGPT edit erased the word Spanish from the end of one of my students' sentences. And the sentence retained its meaning and it sounded more professional, but the emphasis was different. And students notice that. So they're, making them rhetorically aware of the choices they're making and all the tools they use when they write is really important. I'd love to hear from some of you if you have assignment ideas you want to share, something from the Padlet that jumped out at you. Yeah, it's a good question, Jessica, about non-writing based assignments where emerging technologies and AI technologies are entering into students' toolbox. Is anyone seeing that?
I wonder if there are any folks here who are seeing students doing calculations and coding and image generation and that kind of stuff for your assignments. Is there anyone here who's experiencing that? So it's mostly been around writing so far.
See you,
I can
Andrew.
jump
Thank you for
in.
coming. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I can jump in. Yesterday's student panel, we had a computer science student where we really asked the question around, we're really focused in generative AI around writing right now, and for various reasons, because the applications are very generalized. And so it's sort of chat focused, with writing being a predominant output, images, but the images that are output right now are still very stylized. We all seen the hands, the AI hands that are coming out of that. So it's really infant in that particular area, but coding's an area where we are seeing a lot of change. And what the student that was on the panel explained was that, industry is embracing it. And this is really an area where they're moving in and saying, hey, these common tasks, let's just let AI do it.
Yep.
And, but I also think it's really important for all of our instructors to be thinking about what the next generation of applications are going to look like, because they're going to be increasingly specialized around our different fields of study. And that's where we're really going to start to see more powerful AI, I think, but also more disruption in different fields. And obviously some more than others, some discipline areas more than others. And so I know Anusha and I have begun to visit departments and kind of urge them to take a look into the future so you can begin preparing, and in turn also begin to build into your curriculum ways of preparing the students. So I think as we talk about writing, we also in our next breath really need to be thinking about what's the next thing that's going to come along that we really need to be preconceiving and preparing for. And so I think it all, the way that you're presenting this today, Jennifer, it's all the same basket when we start talking about dealing with the academic integrity issues and the coursework adjustment issues that go along with it.
Yeah, I think that is so important. I really want to start thinking about what students need to be able to know and do with and without know about technology, but also be able to do with it and without it. Because I think that is going to really shape how, in my world, how we teach. Are we expecting students to come in already knowing a certain level of proficiency with English writing? And then, what can they do beyond that with tools? David, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually liked where you're going. I didn't want to interrupt the flow.
No, go for it.
So a little bit along the lines that Andrew's raising, what I'm experiencing is, and I know our students are, is not just these ads on campus for AI tools, but AI is aggressively pursuing me.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yes.
When I made a Padlet yesterday, it wanted to give me an AI enhancement. When I'm making a PowerPoint, and so AI it's actually our students and we ourselves are trying to navigate a gauntlet of assault by AI assistants. And so that's the current situation, and that I think that's only going to get more and more prevalent, so that, and what Andrew's talking about is and I think what you're talking about is what is our expectation of what does literacy mean? What does numeracy mean as we go forward? And it's not going to slow down, because I think the capitalist motive is why we're being so aggressively marketed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can't really write without it anymore because it's in all of the writing tools that we already use. So I think, I actually said to my partner the other day, 30 years of teaching writing, I sort of miss student sentences. from 5 or 7 years ago before Google Doc fixed everything. And now, there those quirky, weird, lost control of the train of thought there, could put the wrong word in, it went, some weird, those don't really happen as much anymore. Students are, the proficiency has increased. And I think it's because these tools are embedded into where they write. So that is, really interesting. And I know, David, you probably heard me already talk about this at the TESOL thing the last week, but I think a lot about map tools. You did, phone based or maps on the computer in the car. You can't really use a map anymore, an old map, right? That you can't find them, right? So the map reading skills of a physical map that are gone for many of us. I never had them, but they've atrophied for many of us. Even if you wanted to keep them alive, to your point, David, you can't, because physical maps are gone. You can't buy them at 7-Eleven or at the gas station, and you don't have those books in your car that you used to flip through. So that's a loss of skill. We don't have them. But if you're me, and I think many of our students in terms of writing are me in terms of map reading, I could go 2 feet without having to stop and ask for directions back in the day. I was lost everywhere I went, and it would stop me sometimes. I'm like, I think I'm going to wait to go tomorrow when I know, I got my brother in the car because he knows where we're going. I mean, I literally wouldn't want to drive into San Francisco because I get lost. Now I'll go anywhere I need to go because the map is on my phone. The map is in my car. The voice is telling me I don't have to thumb through that book and figure it out. So I've lost a skill, or I never had a skill that I now don't need, but I'm also like more adventuresome. I'm freer to go where I want to go. So I think about that with students in literacy a lot. How much of this can be outsourced without losing a skill that they're going to need to have access to it at all? How much access are they gaining that they didn't have before? And no amount of schooling, no amount of time. They didn't have the time for the schooling it would have taken to get them where they can go now in terms of writing. I think we could make the same analogy to music, actually. The digital music production tools that exist now, you need a lot of musical awareness to use them, but you don't need to spend 20 or 10 years learning piano or violin anymore to make a lot of music. So we now have a lot of musicians that we wouldn't have had before.
If I could jump in on that metaphor, because we have all these digital tools, a lot of musicians and producers value using one microphone in a garage,
Yes,
one take. And I think similarly, as we get less human in all of our production of text, there will be value to like stream of consciousness written, in a cabin somewhere.
yeah. The human sound is going to become more and more important.
Yes, that'll be a thing, like the authenticity of a human voice.
Well, I think we can move us to the syllabus policy writing portion of this. If you want to think about with me a little bit about how to revise syllabi to meet this moment. I am back on the CEETL document that we shared in the chat earlier. Section 2 is about how to revise your syllabus policies. So we have a few examples to show you of like approaches you could take in your classes. And then we have some time to work together in breakout rooms to think about how you might revise your syllabus policies. So I think it's important to keep in mind, we've sort of already touched on this, but really being clear about policies in your assignments and in your syllabuses, in your syllabi will help students a lot. They want to know what your expectations are and they want to meet them. So you can assume that good faith, I think, to a large degree, but you have to let students know what your expectations are. So 3 approaches are on the CEETL guideline page that I'm on here in the share screen. So the first one is just straight up prohibition. You can just put this on your syllabus. The process of researching, writing, creating, learning, coding, whatever it is that you're teaching is as important as the product. In this class, all assignments must be created on your own. AI tools are prohibited. And there's a note here that you're free to use spell check and grammar, to David's point that some of these tools are inescapable. They're already built in. You may not use entire sentences or paragraphs suggested by AI without providing quotation marks. And I would emphasize to students that those quotations have to be from the original sources. You may not use text generators such as ChatGPT to search the internet for you. If you need information to complete an assignment, use resources such as Google Scholar or library databases. If this were in my syllabus, I'd probably link to the librarian, the library page right there. You may not have an AI program write a draft, either rough or final, of an assignment for you. Students who violate academic integrity may be referred to Office of Student Conduct. So I think that's the clearest, the most straightforward, the most in line with the syllabi policy, the instructional reminder version from the Senate, the policy that we looked at the beginning. So that's possibility number one for prohibition. The second one is transparency. So the sample here is AI text generators derive their output from previously created texts and from other sources that the models were trained on. Thus, when you use it, you must cite the sources the text generator draws on, and you must vet any sources it provides. Not disclosing your sources is a form of academic dishonesty. So this one takes the plagiarism approach and says, at least for writing, and says, chat may not be plagiarism, but when you use it, but it is plagiarizing itself. And so you have to go back and cite the sources that chat is not citing. After each assignment, we will write process notes, and you can call this an acknowledgements page or a methods section, describing the process and methods you undertook in constructing your assignment, including tools used. Process notes or acknowledgements pages or methods sections work like source citation practices to increase your credibility as a writer, a researcher, or creator. They provide transparency for the reader. Remember, you are responsible for the words, ideas, and knowledge under your byline, including content created by AI. AI tools can be an aid in the process, but they also, be aware, contain misinformation, simplifications, bias, and discriminatory language. Those problems become your problems when using AI in your writing. So you have to be accountable for what comes after your name. Make sure it meets your writing meets your own ethical standards, and be prepared to answer to readers for any problems you or AI may have created. Being transparent about your use of AI in your process notes is a way of taking that responsibility. All right. This third one, incorporation and critical AI. This is my favorite. This is the one I'm using, for better or worse. Okay, so in this class, we will have opportunities to explore and analyze AI tools such as ChatGPT. Writers, professionals, and academics routinely use a variety of tools to accomplish their intellectual, artistic, and professional work. Tools like ChatGPT are just that, tools, albeit new and powerful ones. Learning to use them responsibly and to be critical of their limitations and the ideologies behind them is an important part of your education. So at the beginning of the course, we will co-create a class agreement, community agreements, on the use of AI tools that ensures that everyone who wishes to has equal access to such tools and knowledge of their benefits and limitations, and that everyone understands appropriate use of them and is clear on policies. Our class agreements begin with 3 assumptions, and I have done this in my own class. The first assumption that's kind of a non-negotiable for me is the importance of ethics in academic and professional contexts. So that means that writers are transparent and accountable for their words. So that's our first assumption. The second assumption is that students are free to opt out of using technology like AI technology at any time. So even though we're doing some experimentation and we're playing around with it in class, if you don't want to, there's always another route to the assignment goals or what have you. You don't have to sign up for an account. And the third assumption in my community agreements around AI is that college is for learning, and assignments are designed for inquiry, discovery, creativity, self-expression, and learning, and those things come first.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer any questions about the syllabus policies and to hear a little bit. I'd love to hear about how you're thinking about using, updating your syllabus policy to meet this moment.
And I think some folks posted on the Padlet, maybe they've left, but I was curious, is anyone working on putting anything on their syllabus here? I mean, if I were teaching, I would have definitely put something explicitly on my syllabus.
Would you do a prohibition approach, or how would you do it in your context?
I would break it down by assignment, and I would have said, this part of the course is to learn the process, the techniques, so no AI for this. And then this part where maybe they're writing a paper or doing some research using AI would be okay, and
Mhm.
this is how I would expect you to use AI. So
Mhm.
something very explicit, allowing use of it so students know they can experiment with it in the class. But there's some sections where they're,
Mhm.
and it's also discussion why,
Mhm.
what is the purpose of the class, why are they here, what learning is expected, and therefore AI may not be the best thing to do in that section.
Yeah, I think I would also be wanting, and I think next time I'm going to try to do this a little more, like, it's okay for brainstorming in these circumstances. And if you do these steps, right, like, which is read it, don't just cut and copy it, but also fact check it. And then it's okay for editing, but under these circumstances, e.g. that you're actually looking at the changes it's made. Don't assume that just because it's grammatically correct, it actually still says what you want it to say and sounds the way you want it to sound. So I would want those distinctions put in as well. How to use it to get ideas, how to use it to clean up. I think there's probably a third in my context that I haven't quite figured out yet, which is like how to learn the genre parameters that you're being asked to write in. So if I'm asking students to write a 5-page essay, which, or I'm asking them to write a reading response, or I'm asking them to write whatever, I think that sometimes these AI tools give students a lot of understanding, they think, of what that genre looks like. So that might be a third way that I would want to spell out what the policy is. I had a student, actually, he was on the panel yesterday, but he's in my 114 right now. And he said that he basically ChatGPT allows him to spend a lot more time free writing, because he dumps his free write into ChatGPT and it turns it into a more formal, organized essay with transitions and kind of an orderly progression. So that's a genre use, I think. Turn these ideas into an essay that looks like what I guess ChatGPT thinks is what an academic essay looks like. Do we have anyone else who would like to share from the Padlet or thinking about syllabus updating?
I have a question about, you had mentioned that you use the incorporate and critical AI use. And I think if I were teaching a course, I would probably want to do something like that. Though it would take a lot of work, I think, to really try to figure out for myself what feels right. And I'd want to do it with the students too. I guess a question I have is, like, how do you come back to that syllabus statement for like specific assignments, or I don't know. Yeah. How do you talk about it with your students and when in your class?
That's a really good question. I've been really organic so far. And I've basically done it for 2 semesters now by assigning a reading about it. So we have a unit that's basically, what does it mean to use writing to think for yourself? That's kind of the theme of the unit. And they read some stuff about how school writing is, maybe making it hard for them to assert their identity and their opinions and their voice in the school form, and the way screens in general, social media, interferes with their ability to sort of be authentic in their writing. And then we read a third piece about emerging AI technology that is also kind of about how this is taking away our thinking and taking away our authenticity. And so that's the beginning. And so I just have them read it. And then we do a lot of class discussion about whether they agree with it and what they think of it and what they're seeing. And I try to, find out how they're using it and how they're thinking about it in class discussion. And then I've also got some material that I've been sharing with them on critical AI. So from there, we start thinking about like, well, what do you gain and what do you lose with these technologies in terms of your voice and your identity as a writer, which is the theme of my class. So I have some stuff about, like we were saying earlier, Anoshua brought up about how your identity can be erased if you're not careful, or how it can be culturally appropriated if you're not careful, how the editing, that chat will do can erase the linguistic features of your writing that might be close to your identity or important to your meaning. So I do all of that with them to get some critical perspectives going. And then, inevitably I have one or two students, like I do this semester, like Avi, who was on the panel yesterday, who are off and running with it. And so Avi, in his response to the essay that we read on ChatGPT, Avi wrote an essay using the free write, looking at what chat did, critiquing what chat did, embracing parts of it. And he's an amazing student. But I also do this thing in class where every week a student brings in their own essay to read as a text in the class with the whole class. So Avi's was up and he brought in that one. And the whole class read it. We sat in a circle and talked about it as if it was a New Yorker piece, because that's what I do with all of their writing. And that brought up a lot of issues around use and whether it's, going to be good or bad. These discussions take different pathways in the class, because Avi's in one of my sections, but not in the other. So in the other one, students were more skeptical and more desirous of owning their own writing and having a space to write, even if it's full of mistakes. And that's kind of the direction it went in. So kind of depends. And then I'm basically just telling them over and over again that writing is about building relationships between readers and writers. And I am their audience and our class is their audience, and nobody wants to be conned. Nobody wants to read something that's fake, and they get that. So I don't think they're doing it very much because of that. And I'm not grading them on grammar, and I'm not grading them on quality. I am really trying to treat them like they have something to say, and they're sharing it in this class discussion format. So that's how I've done it. But it's like a whole ecosystem, and I've kind of layered it in, is what I would say. A student-centered ecosystem around student writing and student writing beliefs and identities. Let's see,
Jennifer, something came up on the Padlet that I wanted to push a little more. This is about a template, a university level template for articulating AI issues in a syllabus, and organized by areas of concern. So I wonder if one of you posted that, and what might be the areas of concern that you're thinking about? Is it assignments? Is it anything? Is something else?
I'm going to go to the Padlet here if it'll let me.
And I'm wondering if CEETL's guidance on the syllabus statements might be a starting point, but if there's something else that should go in, that might be helpful for a wide variety of folks.
Because I think our policy, I'm going to go back to it in the slides here. The part of the policy that really prohibits, it's any instance of cheating, deceit. Here, should I share? Let me share real quick. This is from our current Academic Senate policy on integrity. Any instance of cheating, deceit, fabrication, forgery, plagiarism, unauthorized altering of records or submitting false documents, unauthorized collaboration, using your own work in more than one class, any forms of academic misconduct. So I think that covers a lot of ground, and I think it would cover prohibited AI use, simply under deceit, if nothing else, or cheating. If you've prohibited it in your class and someone's used it, that's that. The problem is, I think, for a policy that we would all be using is that we all teach, obviously in really different contexts, with differing needs for AI. and tools of all kinds. It's hard to make a blanket statement that would cover all of that in more specificity. I don't know. I mean, David, you're on Senate. Andrew, I know you're in a lot of, Roderick, I know you're in a lot of these conversations. Do you think we're going to get a revision to our current Senate policy on academic integrity?
Andrew?
I defer to David first.
Well, I haven't been hearing that a revision is underway, but I think the update on the Senate policies often happen in response to a need.
Mm-hmm.
So if this comes from academic technology and CEETL and folks like Jennifer, who's doing a lot of teacher training in support of lectures and writing programs, if that comes through to me and others in the Senate, then we'll respond. But I think it probably shouldn't, the senators or the leaders of committees in the Senate aren't the ones that are going to initiate this. They're going to respond. So please, if there is an outcry, maybe even at some point, maybe a survey is needed. We're in this very uncertain time. And at what point do we need that? And if teachers are feeling that would help them, if there were some Senate approved language, then I'm sure Senate would be very responsive.
I mean, my own 2 cents, for whatever it's worth, is that our current policy covers it and that we should focus on that second half of it. What faculty need to do to make academic integrity just part of what we teach is way more important than making sure AI language is in the current policy. Especially because I think, like, I can hear you already saying this, Andrew, that it's going to emerge and so much more is coming as, we go into the future, that anything we make now is going to be outdated by next month. And these things are being integrated into the tools students already use. We have them on Microsoft, right? Like that's our campus infrastructure. So it's going to be hard to prohibit it when you open the web browser and it's like, hi, I'm your AI assistant. What do you need? It's like, well, I need you to go away because I'm going to get caught for cheating. I can take us through a few final slides really quick does anyone want the last word here, or shall it just be me? I'll take the last word, I guess. There's a weird way in which this moment makes me optimistic, because I think since we can't police it so easily, we have to teach it, and that's where my heart is. So I think this moment tells us that we can do more of what we know we should be doing anyway, which is more relational and community-oriented writing and assignments, less busy work, more emphasis on voice, students' lived experiences, linguistic diversity, less standardization of assignments, certainly of writing, more emphasis on how knowledge is constructed, in whose interests, for whose purposes, less on just following the rules of citation practices. These questions are from 1991. I just find this hilarious. All of this, sort of new energy and anxiety that our AI moment is causing. In 1991, this last question was published in Computers and Composition, which is a scholarly journal in my field. How can we meet the challenges presented by the changing nature of literacy in the electronic age? So the more things change, I think our work continues to be, someone said this in the chat, as it's always been: develop students' voices and purpose, make the classroom a welcoming place for all kinds of learners, maybe especially those whose learning doesn't conform and it's not easy to make it conform. All right. I really appreciate that you all came. I think Jessica has a reminder in the chat about filling out a survey. I'm willing to hang out and hear any questions or last thoughts.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's always amazing and a pleasure to hear your thoughts. I was just wondering that maybe what I'm hearing is that a little bit of conversation around reminding people on that second part of the
Mhm.
academic integrity policy might be the
Yeah.
most constructive way to go forward. And maybe, David, that could be a resolution at Senate.
That's
To
a
just
great idea.
bring it up and bring it to people's notice.
But it's a
That's
fuller,
yeah.
yeah, that's a great idea. It's a fuller thing than just prohibit plagiarism or prohibit cheating. There's a bigger lift being asked of us as faculty in that policy.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Mhm.
And really thinking through, and in all these conversations, it's always bringing back the human element,
Mhm.
and just thinking through and um, knowing where the human is necessary,
Mhm.
and engaging in education and going forward in that way.
I mean, along those lines, and this, this is not going to be possible in our current budgetary climate, but giving faculty time in their departments to work on revising SLOs to include AI, what students need to know about it and what they need to be able to do with and without it, needs to go in, every major, like the curricular maps for all of our majors and our GE courses and all that we need to figure out how we're teaching this, because I think already we're really starting to address it in first year writing, so that in a year or so, by the time you get students in the upper division, they will have had some critical AI literacy exposure. So that's important for other faculty to know. You don't have to invent the wheel when you get them in your upper division classes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a plug for the next workshop, which is on critical digital tools and critical AI. And I think that's something that our campus has always been very at the forefront of thinking about equity-mindedness. And I think we could be pushing that a little more around use of digital tools.
Mhm.
So look out for our announcements on that.
Yeah, and I'll just, if I could plug, as Kat's on this call, Kat Frazier from Academic Technology, along with some of her colleagues, will be hosting a promptathon on March 20th. And I think we'll drop the event page in the chat. You can go to ai.sfsu.edu for everything you've heard here and more. But the promptathon is a chance to get some hands-on experience and kind of play with the stuff and learn how to use the prompt, which there are no buttons, levers, or gizmos. You gotta work the prompt. So anyways, please join us for that if you have the time.